Right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the MLA 9 formatting workshop. My name is Stacy Dunsworth, and I am one of the success coaches in the TRIO office. I am also the English and writing specialist. So I do a whole lot of tutoring and a whole lot of mentoring and whatever the needs may be for any writing assignments that you have. But I also can assist with the formatting issues like MLA and APA. And today we're going to go over some of the MLA stuff. Now, I do want to be upfront with you and let you know that this workshop will not make you an MLA expert. Okay. It takes multiple papers. It takes practice to even get to a point where you can consider yourself good. Okay. It takes a whole lot of practice to reach expert status. So please allow yourself some grace as you are going through this. Again, since this is not going to make you an expert in the subject matter, the goal of this workshop is to at least introduce you to the components of MLA 9 formatting and the citations and help reduce the intimidation factor of it. A lot of what makes MLA or APA or any of those other formats so intimidating is that they're just not really taught anymore because it's expected that you learned it in high school. Problem is that most of us have been in high school, several years ago. So there is that little bit of a gap there. So that's what this is really about, is just helping you feel confident going into those MLA assignments and knowing how to look for things if you don't quite remember what the rule is. It's all just a matter of getting familiar with it and practicing it, and then you'll be fine. So let's go ahead and get started. So here is an overview of what we're going to be talking about. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the context of MLA formatting and what its purpose is. We'll look at the basic MLA structure. We'll also go over how to compile your works cited page. This is the page where you list all the references that you used. We'll practice doing some in-text citations. We'll look at some academic writing basics. Academic writing basics can apply to any kind of academic writing, regardless of the style that you're assigned to write in. And then we'll look at some MLA specific writing basics, which is like how to write dates and numbers and things like that. We'll also go through the motions of setting up a Word document so you can see how that works. I don't believe in using templates that are already made because these tend to be wrong a lot of the time. I'm all about setting up the Word document myself, making my own template. That way I know what's right. And then also, as you are setting up your Word document and going through these motions, this will help you learn how MLA writing works. And this will help you progress more into the expert status as you keep going. So if you don't learn how it works, then that's what is going to create so much trouble for you. So we're going to eliminate that and go through all the motions. Okay. So first and foremost, the context of MLA formatting is, well, it's an academic paper. MLA formatting, APA formatting, Chicago style, whatever format you are assigned to work in, it's just a matter of making your paper look a certain way. And the reason for this is to allow for easy reading, because it makes things more simple, makes things more concise, more consistent. It's giving you a formula to follow. And then this way you are concentrating more on the content of the paper instead of in the aesthetics. Like, we're not trying to make it pretty or anything like that. We don't worry about that at all. We just follow this formula and we concentrate on what information we are trying to convey within that paper. Now, MLA formatting is used mostly in disciplines that really get engaged with specific text. This is found most commonly in English classes, literature, languages, philosophy. You're going to see those mostly though in your English classes, like your Comp 1 and your Comp 2, at least at WSU Tech. It's where you can expect to find that the most. You will see it in other classes too, but especially in Comp 1 and Comp 2. So before I dive into the MLA structure, what I want to explain real quickly is that when I say this is an academic paper, what does that mean? An academic paper is not about entertainment. This is not a blog post. This is not a diary page or a text message or anything like that. This is something that is all about sharing facts in a direct manner. It's very dry, in all honesty. It can be quite boring at times, but that is the purpose behind academic papers. It's not showing like how funny we are or how creative we are or anything like that. It's just very straightforward. It's sharing the information. And now to put it in MLA structure, what we're going to look at here is the basic components of it to start with. So in MLA structure, you will always have 1-inch margins. That is definitely a given. This is something that will never change, just 1-inch margins. Times New Roman size 12 point is the recommended. However, it is not the required font and size. So technically speaking, the rule in MLA is actually, quotes, an easily readable typeface and between 11 and 13 points. That's what the rule book actually says. So that being said, your instructor may require you to use a different margin or a different font, and different font size. And that's okay. If your instructor wants you to use something different, then do what your instructor says. If there is no specific guideline given from your instructor though, then go ahead and stick with Times New Roman 12 point. You can't go wrong with that one. MLA papers are always double spaced. You always indent the first line of each paragraph by a 1/2 inch. We do need to make sure that we don't put any extra spaces between our paragraphs. In APA, if you've seen that, there's a separate title page, but in MLA, it's a little bit different, and all of the title information is listed on the first page. There's no separate title page for that. And on the right side, like in the top right-hand corner of each page, it will have your name and the page number. Okay. And we're going to walk through setting all this up here in just a little bit. So these are the basics of the MLA structure. So here is a good example for you. Notice that the title is centered, it is not capitalized, and there is no extra space underneath the title. Okay. Here, note the 1/2 inch indentation, the double space, the name and the page number in the top right-hand corner. Okay. And again, we're going to go through the motions of setting all this up. Just make sure that you are familiarizing yourself with the way it looks. Now, the works cited page will come after the body of your paper. The works cited page is where we list all of the references that we used. Okay. Whenever we are writing in an academic paper, we pretty much always, I will say very rarely, will you be able to write an academic paper without having to cite at least a few sources. So as we're presenting our information in our academic papers, we have to give credit to the source where we learned this information that we're talking about. Anything that is not your idea or something that you just know, you have to give credit to where it was that you learned it. And in this works cited page, note that there are some similarities with the rest of your paper, but some differences also. So let's just kind of analyze this a little bit first. So first and foremost, notice that right here, it still has the header where it has your name and the page number. And then we come down to the works cited title that is centered, but it's not bolded or italicized. It's just very nondescript. And then the entries for your sources start right underneath the works cited title. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different because remember in the body of the paper, I said we have to indent the first line of the paragraph by a ½ inch, and then the rest of it is all flush left. We're going to do that backwards on the works cited page. And instead, it's the first line of each entry that will be flush left, and the rest of it will be indented by a ½ inch. This is called a hanging indent. And this is something I'll show you how to set up when we do our practice here in just a little bit. A couple things to note is that these have to be alphabetized according to this first letter over here on the far left side. Okay, so here's A, M, O. You'll have to put these in alphabetical order and make sure that they remain double spaced. Again, make sure it maintains the hanging indent and everything looks good in that case. Okay. Now with the works cited page, this tends to be pretty intimidating for students a lot of the time, and it's understandably so. But here is the pattern that you can follow. So first and foremost, I put this in here just for fun with the works cited. I already knew a lot. Something funny, but it's never going to fly when you're doing actual assignments. You always have to back up your academic papers with documented evidence. Okay, so anytime you're writing in an MLA style, just note that you will have a works cited page. You're going to have to, and you will have to have some sources. So when you're creating your works cited page, this is the standard structure. Now, note that not everything listed on here will be available for every kind of source. Where you found it, all that good stuff. But basically the format of it is you list the author first, followed by a period. The title of the source, which is in the quotation marks, this refers to the title of an article that you used. The container, on the other hand, is the overall work where you found this article. So this could be like your container could be a journal, it could be a book, whatever that overall work was. That is what you put down for the title of the container. Close attention to detail because, like, notice here under the book, there are 2 authors listed. So what we do is we list the first author, last name first, comma, and then we write in just regular name format, Bill Williams. So Herman, comma, Alice, comma, and Bill Williams. And then we always put a period right there after the last author is listed. And now this is a book. So we write down the name of the book, and this is title caps. So each of the letters in the words, those are all capitalized. And then we put in the name of the press and the year of publication. And then in the journal article, for example, there's only one author listed in that case. And so that is Cawthorn, comma, Rhonda, period. Again, we put a period after the last name of or after the final name, excuse me, of the author. And then this was an article, so we are putting first quotation marks around the name of the article, which is Applying Pressures to the Heart, an interview with Tim O'Brien, period. And there actually should be some quotation marks there that I missed. So this goes to show you that perfection does not exist. And it doesn't matter how much practice you do it, you're still going to find some mistakes along the way, just like what I did. There should be a quotation mark right here after this period. Okay, and then the name of the journal is in italics. Remember, that's the title of the container. So we put in the Crab Orchard Review. We abbreviate in lowercase ball period 1 no period 2. So for volume 1, number 2 in 2004. And this was taken from pages 1 through 14 of the Crab Orchard Review. Okay, so now for the in-text citations, these correlate directly to your references page, okay? So when you list your sources on your works cited page, you're going to need 2 key pieces of information to make your in-text citation. And the way that you can do this is first you look at the person's name, you need the title of the source, and you need to specify where you found that information. So if we are citing, for example, this book by Alice Herman and Bill Williams, then the way we do that is we put them in parentheses. We'll say Herman and we do spell out and, Herman and Williams. And then there's no comma here, just a space. And then whatever page number where you found that particular piece of information or that page range. And likewise, for the journal article, if we were to cite this inside the body of your paper, again, the pieces of info that we need are your source name and where you found it. So we know that the in-text citation would have to be Cawthorn, no comma, no period, nothing, just Cawthorn space, and then the page where you found it. So here is a good way that you can find some assistance with these. And I will let you know that there are some packets available in the TRIO office that go with this workshop if you are interested in doing that. And one of the pages in that packet is a guide for how to do the in-text citations. Remember, you always need 2 key pieces of information, the source name and where you found it. So it's just a matter of applying it based on like how many authors there are. That's the only thing that might make it a little bit different for you is whether or not you're writing out several authors or just one author and then where you found it. Let's do a little bit of practice here. So first of all, I'm going to show you real quickly a good tool for helping you develop your works cited page, okay? So let's do that first. We will get a few works cited listed, and then we will practice doing in-text citations for those particular sources, okay? So I'm going to come in to the internet real quick. I do want to say that Google is a writer's best friend, so please never be afraid to use Google. Okay, so going into Google, we're going to search for citation generators, okay? My personal favorite is Scriber. It is free to use. Most of these are free to use also, including EasyBib, MyBib, Citation Machine. All these are free to use. They may require that you watch an ad video to use it for free. My personal favorite though is Scriber. I find that this is the one that is most accurate. And all you have to do is come up here to under references. We need to change the style. We need to change it to MLA 9. And we are looking. There are a lot of styles out there, and I really wish I could answer the question of why we don't just pick one and everyone use the same thing. I'd be all for that, to be real honest with you. And I don't know why that is, but In the meantime, I guess we will continue to use MLA, APA, whatever we have to do. There we go. Okay, so apparently it's faster if you just type it in. Let's save the changes. And then right here in this search engine, you can either input the title, like if you're using a book, you can input the title, you can input a web page's URL. If you know the ISBN number or the DOI number, you can put any of those into the search engine right here. I'm going to search for a book. I'm going to use my current textbook. So we're going to say the title right here is Adult Learning, Linking Theory, and Practice. Okay, and now we'll hit Cite. As it searches, it will give you a choice. It wants to know if this is from some type of literature that you found or if it's a book. For me, this is a book, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then it will let me see the different options. And I can tell you that the first one is the right one. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then there are two things that are happening here, okay? Notice how the works cited entry, this is something that we can just copy and paste right into our references page. And down here, it also gives the recommendations for the in-text citations. Now, note here that it doesn't list page numbers or anything. That's okay. We know that when we go to enter those, that we will just need to add the page number where we found whatever that we're trying to cite. So we're going to copy this to the clipboard first. Now we will paste it. Okay. So let's find just a couple more sources, and then we're going to practice doing those in-text citations, linking those to this particular source page. Okay, so let's do that again. I already have some down here that I had searched for earlier, so I'll just go ahead and use those. But again, if you are looking for something that you need to cite, remember that you can use this website and the search engine to find it. And then I'm going to put these onto our little practice page as well. Okay, now also look here. Remember how these need to be in alphabetical order based on the first letter of the first line. So I'm going to cut and paste. Actually, easier just to do this one. I'm going to cut and paste them to put them in the appropriate alphabetical order. Okay, so now let's practice the in-text citation aspect of this real quick. Let's say that inside our paper, we put down some information that we learned from Miles Horton's book. Okay, so what we do is, again, the pieces of information we need are one, the source name, which is the author's name, and two, the location of where you found it, which is usually going to be a page number. However, if you do come across some, like say you're using a web page for a source and it does not list the page numbers, that's okay. You can just do another indication of where you found it. So for example, let's say that we are going to cite Brookfield and Holst, okay? So within the text of our paper, let's say there's my pretty little sentence. And I need to give Brookfield and Holst credit for that. Okay, so I'm looking right here. How am I going to put this in? Well, I want Brookfield and Holst because we need both of their last names. And this goes in parentheses. We're going to say Brookfield. We do spell out and Holst, and then no commas or anything like that, just a space, and then the page number where you found it. So let's say I found that on page 17, and then we'll close that parenthesis and put a period. Okay. Now, as I was saying before about if there's not a page number listed, let's do an example of something like that. So let's say that we are looking at Miles Horton. Say that we're looking at this particular source. Okay, and we need to give Miles Horton credit. Okay, so there's my pretty little sentence. And then we know that we need the author's name. That is Horton. Let's say there's no page number. So where did we find it? Well, we could say that we found it in paragraph 4. And that is sufficient if there are no page numbers listed. Page numbers are better, but if there are no page numbers, you can't make it up. That's okay. Just do the best you can to indicate where you found it, usually indicating a paragraph, or in certain literary sources, like if you're using a Shakespeare source or something like that, then you could indicate a line where you found it. But for the most part, just stick with something like paragraph, and that will be sufficient. Okay, let's do one more practice, and we're going to cite this book right here, which is my current textbook. This is from Miriam and Vierma. If I want to give them credit for something, so here is my paraphrase or my summary of whatever information I learned from these authors, and then I'm going to give them credit for it. So in parentheses, I'm going to say Miriam and Vierma. And then again, now I need to indicate where I found it. Let's say I found it on page 10. And then, on this, we've focused on putting it strictly at the end of the sentence in a parentheses kind of format. You don't have to do this every single time, as long as you have those two key pieces of information, if I could talk, then you can actually incorporate that into your sentence. So that way you don't have to structure every sentence exactly the same. You can tie it, or you can kind of mess around with it a little bit. So just to give you an example what this means, let's say I want to say Brookfield and Holst argued that, and then, whatever the case may be. And then see, I have my one piece of information, the name of the source. What's the other piece that I need? It's where I found it. So that's all that would have to go into the parentheses, is the page number where I found it. We can also say, according to Horton, and then the rest of your sentence, state whatever it is that you learned from Horton, and then indicate where you found it. Okay. So again, you have to have those two key pieces of information: the name of the source and where you found it. As long as you have both of those within the sentence, you're able to put the author's names in as part of the narrative, and then just put the location where you found it inside the parentheses. Or if you want to do this instead, you do have that option. This just gives you a little bit more flexibility, so you're not setting all your sentences up in exactly the same way. And now if you are using a direct quote from one of your sources, you will need to put that in quotation marks. So let's just pretend that that I published a paper, okay? What's something I always say? Well, I always say completion, not perfection. Okay, so I'm going to put the quotation marks on either side of that quote because those are the direct words that are coming from the source. And now I need to do the citation part. Again, we need source name, so that's Dunsworth, and where you found it. Let's say paragraph 1, and then the period. So notice right here, again, this is where attention to detail comes in handy. Notice there is no period right here after the sentence before the quotation. We wait to put the period until after the citation. So this way your reader knows exactly where this came from. This sentence right here is directly associated with this source. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Again, it will just take some practice, and we will do some more of that here in just a little bit. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. Now, with all this said, my biggest pro tip for you is to seek sources that definitely have an author or authors' names listed. This will make your in-text citations much easier because, you know, as you can see, it's really not that complicated. You only need the author name and where you found it. It's when you don't have an author listed that it tends to get complicated. So this is a guide that you can follow for how to do the citations. Like, for example, if you don't have an author listed on one of them, you use a shortened version of the work's title instead. If you have a corporate or organizational authors, then you use the full name of the organization. This takes the place of an author name, but it's still the source where the work came from. And sometimes you'll have multiple authors. If you have 3 or more authors, then what you do is you list the first author's last name, followed by this right here, et al, et space al period. Et al is Latin for and others. Okay, so you will see this quite frequently as you're doing academic writings because there are many sources out there that have 3 or more authors. So this is one that you will probably use over and over again. So again, if you have 3 or more authors, it's the last name of the first person who's listed on there. So in this example, it's Dunsworth, et al, period, space, and then where you found that information. Now, moving on a little bit to academic writing basics. Now these basics are going to apply no matter if you're using MLA or APA. So what this boils down to is formal, okay? Any type of academic writing is all about formality. Again, this is not meant to entertain anybody. There's no openness to be creative or anything like that. It's just very straightforward and informative. Okay, so we need to keep this formal. What this means is that, first of all, we avoid using contractions. We don't say it's, we say it is. We don't say don't, do not. Okay, it's not can't, it's cannot, and so on and so forth. We do not use contractions at all in academic writing. This is one that I struggled to overcome, and I was counted off for it many, many times. So, when I say that getting the hang of the MLA writing or the APA writing, it takes time, it truly does. And, give yourself some grace, just learn from the mistakes that you do make and the feedback from your instructors, and you'll be fine. Yeah, first and foremost, don't use contractions. So, no it's, it is, and so on and so forth. We avoid using a conversational tone. What this means, for the most part, is don't use words like you or your. because you're not actually having a conversation with someone. You're not trying to relate to them or anything like that. We talk in third person. So that means we say the students do this, the consumers do this, the teachers do this. We say they. It stands to reason that, so it's all about not sounding like we are just sitting there having a conversation with somebody. And again, don't use the words you or your. So an example of this might be, instead of saying, you would never expect to find this result in an experiment. Don't say that. Instead, you would say, the researchers would never have expected that conclusion, or something to that effect. We're using the third person. On occasion, and with special permission from your instructor, you may be able to use first person, which is I, me, my. For the most part though, and unless you get specific okays from your instructor to do that, then just stick with third person. With the slang terms, we have to avoid slang terms at all costs. Okay, slang terms, also called colloquial terms. These are things like wifey, hubby, bestie, things that are not wrong in everyday conversation, but they're also not formal. Okay, so like instead of saying wifey or hubby, we would say spouse, domestic partner, significant other, something like that. And if you get to a point where you're stuck and you don't know how the formal version of what you want to say would go, remember that Google is our friend. So you can always bring up Google and say how to say whatever. Okay. And then with the concise phrasing, what this means is getting rid of all the fluff. We want to get rid of all those extra words that don't really add meaning to what it is we're trying to say. So you might see this in things like filler words, for example. Filler words are things like just, really, very, things that don't add any value at all. They just need to stay out, okay? What these do is they water down your writing, and we want academic writing to be strong and bold. We don't want a whole lot of helping verbs. So the helping verbs are things like am, is, are, was, were, have, has, had, be, been, being. There are a whole bunch of helping verbs, and we tend to use weaker verbs and then add a whole bunch of helping verbs to it. And I'm honestly not sure why we do that, except if maybe it's a confidence issue. I'm really not sure why we do that, but we do. So like instead of saying ran quickly, for example, I would say sprinted. So quickly is an adverb, and adverbs tend to be filler words as well. You can usually identify an adverb by noticing if it ends in ly. And an adverb is something that describes how the verb was carried out. So like in the example I just gave, ran quickly. Well, how did he run? He ran quickly. But that's an extra word. So instead, it's a whole lot more effective to find a strong verb instead of using a weaker verb with a helping verb, because we want to be confident in our writing. So again, instead of ran quickly, sprinted. And if you are ever not sure of how you can say that, or whatever it is that you're trying to state, again, Google is our friend. Okay. Now with the MLA rules, so every style is going to be a little bit different for its rules for numbers, dates, abbreviations, and all that good stuff. So with MLA, words that could be written in 1 to 2 words should be written in 1 to 2 words. Okay, I'm going to bring up another Word document here and just show you what I mean by that. So let's just start this thing over. Okay. So words that are like 1, 10, 15, 1 to 5, anything that can be written in just 1 to 2 words should be written as words. You should also always start a sentence. If you're starting a sentence with a numerical value, then you need to write it out as words instead of using the numerals. Okay. So again, if it can be written in 1 to 2 words, then write it out in word format, just like this. Okay. But on the other hand, if you have numerals that cannot be written in just 1 to 2 words, then we'll go ahead and use numerals. So for example, 732. 732. It would take 4 words to write that out. That's over 2, so we're going to write it as a numeral. Okay. And then another example might be 153. Okay. There might be some times when you can use numerals and words together. This is usually found in cases of like extremely high numbers. So like 2.7 billion people. That's a lot of people. And we're not going to write out all those zeros, and your reader doesn't want to read all those zeros. So in that case, it's much easier and more straightforward to do the numeral first, the 2.7, followed by the word billion. Okay. And you'll also use numerals for like exact measurements, monetary values. In MLA, you will see monetary values written in this kind of format with that $sign. And fractions, decimals, years, all those will remain in numerals. Now, when we're talking about dates, I do want to note that in the works cited list, it's okay to use abbreviations for the months in the dates that are in the works cited list, but in the title or in the body of the paper, then we don't use the abbreviation. Okay, but we do write it in this format right here. It's going to be the day, the month, and then the year. Day, month, year. Day, month, year. Okay. Now, make sure you keep this consistent. Like when you put the date like on your title page, when you're doing that, up at the top of that first page, go ahead and write it in this format. Also keep it in this format throughout the body of your paper. And then when you are in the works cited page, if you have to input a date, like a date access or something like that, then it's okay to abbreviate the month if it's more than 5 letters long. So in that case, it would be 25 September 2023. And now with MLA, moving on a little bit here. Let me get back to our PowerPoint. Now with MLA, abbreviations are allowed. However, there are some caveats to it. So first and foremost, you cannot expect your reader to know what your abbreviation stands for. So you have to define it for them first. Okay. So to show you what this means, let's go back into our Word document. Okay, so let's in education, I frequently work with something called FERPA. That stands for Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. Oh, actually, it's Family Education. Sorry. Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So I would have to write that out first because I know my reader is not likely to know what FERPA means without me explaining it first. Okay, so I'm going to write FERPA. And then after that, then I can refer to it as FERPA the rest of the way throughout the paper instead of writing Family Education Rights and Privacy Act over and over and over again. Okay. And note that when you are doing these abbreviations, we don't use periods in them. So like if you're referring to the United States, we don't say US in this way, like what we are used to doing. We don't use periods. So it's just capital letters with no punctuation. Okay. And that takes some getting used to. If you mess it up here and there, it's okay. It's just one of those things that will come about with practice. However, if you do, then know that there probably are some rules that you need to follow for MLA. So usually that looks like in your tables, don't use horizontal lines or things like that. So if you do find yourself having an assignment where you need to have a table or a figure or something like that, make sure you look up the rules to find whatever that is. And again, you can do that just by Google. It's very simple to find whatever it is that you're needing to find. And now we are going to move on into doing a little bit of practice. And what this practice is for this one is that we are going to go through the motions of setting up a Word document in MLA format. So I'm going to come back to Microsoft Word and just delete all that. Okay, so first and foremost, when you are setting up your document, you want to begin by saving it. There is nothing more devastating than losing your work if something goes kind of haywire. So go ahead and start by naming the document, save it where you can easily access it. And then my typical practice for doing my own templates for whatever style of formatting is I start from the top and I work from the way down. So that being said, what we want to do first is we want to check our margins. So on the layout tab and margins, we want to ensure that is normal or 1 inch on every side. Okay. And we also want to make sure that we have our font and our size ready. So Times New Roman, size 12 point. Since I already have mine set, I don't have to go about doing that. But if yours is not set on Times New Roman 12 point, go ahead and set it there. We also need to do our spacing now. So what we're going to do is come right here to this paragraphs section. Click on this little box in the bottom right-hand corner. It's going to bring up these options. And what we're going to do, two things. First of all, we're going to look at the spacing and before and after. Both of these need to say 0 point, not auto, not 8, 0 point. Okay. And then we're going to change the line spacing to double and say, okay. And now we're going to begin with our header, and we can access our header in a couple ways. One way is to come up here to insert and do header. My personal favorite is I just double click toward the top of the document, and that brings up a header window also. And then on the home tab, I'm going to make this right aligned and put in my last name, just one space. And then on the insert tab, click on page number and say current position, plain number. Okay. Now, this is where you'll need to do a little bit of checking, because if you don't have yours automatically set on Times New Roman 12 point like I do, it will change it back to whatever font you already had. So you may need to highlight it and then change the font and the size again, just to make sure it's consistent with the rest of your paper. And just double click underneath that dotted line anywhere to exit. in theory. Oops. I remember if you mess up like I just did, Control Z on your keyboard is a wonderful way to fix your errors. Okay, and then finally, it allowed me to click out of that. I don't know why it was stuck like that. We're going to go back to the home tab, and now we're going to start entering in the information for the title. Okay, so first and foremost, that is your name. Okay, first and last. Now you're going to put in your instructor's name. So let's just say that I'm in Mrs. Green's class. This is Courtney Green. And then it wants the name of your class. So you can do this in a couple ways. Some people say English 101. I would tend to say composition 1. And then the date that it's due. And remember, we don't do abbreviations in the dates for the title information. And again, we're doing day, month, year. And this is for the day it's due, not the day you started, okay? So if my paper is due on September 25th, there we go. Okay, and now we'll hit enter just one time, nothing extra, just hit it one time. And we will come into the center alignment and we will type the title of our paper. Now, note that even though this is centered, it is not bolded or italicized or anything funky. It's just very straightforward. So that is the hallmark of MLA formatting, is just very straightforward. Okay. So again, no bolding, no italics, nothing, no extra spaces. Now we'll hit enter one more time. And then we'll make it left aligned. And then this is where you will start writing your paper. And now to make our works cited, I do go ahead and get my works cited page ready at the outset. That way I can go ahead and just start pasting everything in as I'm going instead of having to wait until the end. You can do it however you want, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set it up. So if you hit enter one time after the last line of your paper, okay, now we're going to put in a page break. And then here we go. On the home tab, we're going to come over here to make it center aligned again. And we just call it works cited. Again, no bolding, no underlining, no italics, nothing. Just very, very basic, very straightforward, works cited. Now I'll hit enter one time again. And we're going to make this left aligned. And then this is where it gets funky. So again, remember that in the body of the paper, we have the standard indentation where the first line of every paragraph is indented a ½ inch. But then on the works cited page, we reverse that to do a hanging indent where the first line is all the way flush left and it's the rest of the entry that is indented below it. So the way that we set up the hanging indent is that, so first of all, I have hit enter to come underneath the works cited title. I'm going to come over to left aligned, and now let's go back into the paragraph and click on that little box again. And now this time, see, we're going to leave all this the same. None of that's going to change. The only thing that we're going to do this time is under special, we're going to put hanging. Okay. And now whenever you start pasting in your sources, you'll start to see it indenting it in the hanging indentation format. And the cool thing about this is that as you are typing along, as you're adding length to your paper, it will continue to push down your works cited page. It's not going to interfere with anything. So that's why I go ahead and I put it in like right at the beginning. And then I'm working on that as I go instead of waiting until the last minute for putting all of those in. I think that ends up being more stressful than anything. So I like to do it as I go. And especially since Word allows us to work like this, where it'll just keep pushing everything down. Once we get this template set up for ourselves, then Microsoft Word will work with us on getting this done. So just to give you an idea of what this might look like. So first of all, you can do your indentations in the body of the paper in a couple ways. One way is that every time you start a new paragraph, after you hit enter to start a paragraph, you just hit the tab key one time and that'll move it over a ½ inch. Or you could also use this little ruler up here and push that top one in a ½ inch. And now every time you hit the enter key below that, it will go ahead and indent your first page. But notice that if I click underneath works cited, it's different. This is showing us that the hanging indent is set. Okay, it's not going to interfere with it. So you don't have to worry about that getting messed up. I'm going to give you just a little bit of an idea of what this will look like. Okay. So let's just say that you've started filling in your papers. It didn't keep my formatting, so I do need to fix that. This is something to watch for. If you are copying and pasting anything into your paper, you need to watch the formatting and correct it so that it matches what the MLA standards are. So again, we want this to be 0, 0, double. Okay. It is still times 0 and 12 points, so that's all right. We need this to be indented. Okay. So again, as you are typing along and you are filling in the information, it will keep pushing your works cited down. And now, just for a little bit more practice, let's go ahead and develop our works cited page. And we'll do that using Scriber again, just for a little practice. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right there for just a second. Let's go into Google. Okay, let's just start over, okay? So just for kicks and giggles, let's go ahead and develop a works cited page. So again, we look for citation generators. And I like Scriber. And then we can search for anything that we want here. Okay, so let's look for another book of mine. This is Enhancing Adult Motivation to Learn. I've been up to my ears in papers lately, as you can see. So we will say Enhancing Adult Motivation to Learn. And we're going to click Cite. Okay, this is a book, so I'm going to search for books. Then it's going to give me a list, and I can choose the one that is the correct one. That is this one. And then here it is still MLA 9th edition, so we know that this is the correct one. And then the works cited entry, we're going to copy this to the clipboard. So then we can paste it onto our works cited page in the Word document. And just for simplicity's sake and for this for time's sake as well, I'll just use these that I already have here, even though we've kind of gone over them already. But I still want to walk you through the motions of putting your works cited page together. I want to copy to the clipboard. Okay, and then in our works cited page, just click underneath the title, and then we're going to paste it in. So note that they are in alphabetical order. Note the hanging indent is in effect, so we did that correctly. And now it's going to be a matter of how do we give these works the citations that are in text. Okay. How do we do the in-text citations? What are those two key ingredients that we need again? It's the source name and where you found it. So if we are citing something within the body, so when I say the body of our paper, this is what I'm referring to right here. This is the body. This is where you're typing everything that you are trying to say. Okay. So within the body of the paper, if we need to give someone credit, again, we need the person or the source name, where you found it. So let's say that we're going to cite Wlodkowski and Ginsburg. Okay. So to do that in my parentheses, I would say Wlodkowski. Remember, we spell out and Ginsburg. And then the page number where we found it. So let's say I found it on page 53. Okay. Now, what if we wanted to put those citations like within the sentence structure itself? So we could say, a study from Wlodkowski and Ginsburg revealed, and then, you know, whatever you want to fill in. And then at the end of that sentence, so we already have the source name that's already mentioned within the sentence. So all that's left is to indicate where we found it. So then we would put the page number by itself in the parentheses at the end. Okay, remember, two key pieces of information: the source name, where you found it. Okay. Now, finishing up here, let's talk about the resources just a little bit. I've already shown you the citation generators. I'm sure your instructors have too. Do note that in the scholarly articles that you find, like through the library's database, there usually is a cite feature in the scholarly articles. So you can use that. You can use Scriber, EasyBib, Citation Machine. Any of those can help you develop your works cited page just to make it a little bit easier for you. But don't become too dependent on these. Make sure that you learn how to do it by hand also. And you can do that by following that basic structure that we talked about a little bit earlier in the PowerPoint presentation. It's important to note these basic rules because these citation generators do not always get it correct. So it's important to know at least the basic rules so that you can identify it if they get it wrong and you can make that correction. Some other references and guides. Purdue OWL is extremely popular. I'm sure that your instructor has already pointed you in that direction. That is very useful. It has lots of guides, lots of sample papers. It's very helpful. You can also use Scriber. Not only does it have the citation generator, but it also has some guides in it, as does EasyBib. And interestingly enough, one of my favorite guides when learning these, whether it's APA or MLA, whatever it is, YouTube is actually one of my favorite things because, like, let's say you don't have an hour to spend with me doing this all over again. Let's say you just need to review something really quick, you know, just like a quick 5-minute thing to do a particular aspect of it, like in text citations, for example. If you go to YouTube and you do a search, you can find video tutorials on just those little bits of info. You don't have to watch this whole thing over and over again. So know that that is there for you and it is a good resource. And I can't stress this enough. Google is a writer's best friend. So don't be afraid of Google. Just ask it questions and you're sure to be fine. And also, don't hesitate to ask your instructors questions about the MLA stuff. Ask the tutors in the tutoring hub. You can ask me or Leon in Trio. Any of us are happy to help you, but again, remember that these are there for you to use and they are very helpful. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. Please don't forget to submit an activity evaluation form so that we can get you Trio credit for doing this workshop. You do find this in the Trio Blackboard shell. So again, you go to My Organizations and Trio. And then once you get into the Trio shell, look over on the left side of the screen at the menu and just click on your Trio task list and then choose the activity evaluation form. It'll take you to a Google form. And it just takes a few minutes to complete it. And then lastly, I do want to open up the invitation to you that if you want to go over any of these things like one-on-one or cover anything that maybe wasn't quite as clear to you, I am happy to sit down with you. We can always schedule a tutoring session so that we can cover whatever that you need to go over with and maybe clear up any confusion. In Trio and in Tutoring Hub, English and writing tutoring does require an appointment. So if you are looking to schedule an appointment with me, you can either email me directly at the email address listed on here. You can call the Trio office or you can stop it by the Trio office and anyone can help you schedule a time. I do also offer some proofreading and revision services if you want some feedback before you turn something in. However, I don't review full papers. What I usually do is I read the second page for like the grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, all that stuff. And I give you feedback based on that. And then it's up to you to apply it to the rest of your paper. I do also, I do a quick look through just to look for the formatting stuff as well. So I cannot stress this enough. I have many students and I'm more than just a tutor. So that said, I cannot guarantee that I can get a paper back to you the same day. So it's very, very important that you plan ahead and you send it to me at least a day or two in advance. Don't wait until the day it's due to send it to me because I cannot guarantee that I can get it back to you. And also, please make sure that you email the drafts to my email address directly instead of sending them through Blackboard because I don't always get them through Blackboard. So I hope this was helpful to you. Again, if you have any questions or if you'd like to schedule some one-on-one tutoring time, feel free to contact me. And again, if you would like a copy of the packet that goes along with this workshop, they are available in the tutoring office. So feel free to stop and grab one. I hope this was helpful and I look forward to seeing you all in the Trio office or out in the hallways or wherever. I look forward to chatting with you. Have a great day.